Is Russia making its offensive push not just in Bakhmut, but in Donetsk city as well? And is it seeing the results that it hoped for? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is December 18th, 2022. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get right into it. Okay, so first off, we got to look at the tactical map here, and there's a couple of notable updates. The first is the recognition that we talked about yesterday, that Russian troops have fully captured Yakovlivka. Sometimes the Russians will claim premature victory in some of these regions, but it seems like it's definitive that they have indeed taken this key stepping stone on their way to Soledar. We've discussed in the previous video that these villages form defensive strong points that sort of operate as a defense in depth for Bakhmut and allowing the protection of key roads going into and out of the city. So by being able to seize these, they are increasing Russia's ability to not just operate, but to support their troops, right? From Yakovlivka, other offensive operations in this area can be supported with indirect fire. You can also have maneuver elements stage not just up the main road into Soledar, but can stage out in Yakovlivka in a sort of support by fire element. So I think this is fairly important to the larger situation. It's still a small village in the grand scheme of things, but this is a sign that Russia is indeed trying to do the stepping stone strategy that we've talked about, where they go village by village in the outskirts in an effort to put increasing pressure on Bakhmut. And when we zoom in, we can see here that, again, it seems to be correctly reported that Russian forces have not taken any part of this suburban outskirt of Bakhmut. And I think this is important for a couple reasons. Chiefly that it's really, really hard to take and hold urban territory. And Russian forces, I think, are finding this out, right? They are continuing to try to seize this block, but they're realizing that attacking even a very destroyed block of buildings is not the same thing as taking open terrain. It just is much harder to maneuver, much harder to identify enemy positions, much harder to establish fields of fire. And I think that's why they found themselves pushed into it and then pushed out again. Generally in this conflict, and this is a broad generalization, it seems as though Russian artillery is probably the superior simply because of its volume, but Russian infantry seem like they have a bit to be desired. In contrast, Ukrainian light infantry seems quite good, and unfortunately, in urban warfare, light infantry really does have a tremendous advantage, simply because, again, the fighting is so close quarters that an artillery is too much of a blunt tool to really engage in the surgical fire support missions that urban warfare demands. But that's not all the territory that's changed hands. Not just Yakovlivka, not just near Bakhmut, but the Russians have made advances near Ozaryankiva. Now, when we zoom in, we can see Ozaryankiva is just south of Kurdyumivka, which is well south of Bakhmut. So it's sort of in a strange location to me because it doesn't really put pressure on Bakhmut. As you guys can see, there's two major roadways that it kind of feeds, but both of which are mixed in control, right? So neither side can really use them. But I think this is just part of a general Russian effort to apply consistent pressure across this front line. I wouldn't overweight this change in territory as being terribly significant. But what's also interesting is the fact that Russians have also made advances right outside Donetsk city in Marinka. And as we've talked about, they look like they're trying to do some sort of, again, the stepping stone strategy of going village by village. I think their larger objective is to, again, improve the security of Donetsk city. This is certainly a priority of the DNR, who view it as their capital. And so the best route to do that, I believe they've identified, is stepping stone to go village by village up through this major highway here, village by village through this major highway here, and then it looks like they're trying to push west to try to block off this highway here. So what you're doing is really trying to control the best avenues of advance into Donetsk city in the hopes that Ukrainian artillery and indirect fire assets will be less able to pressure DNR headquarters elements in the city itself. And seizing Marinka is an essential part of this. As you guys can see, it is undoubtedly urban warfare, and progress has been grindingly slow. You can see literally it's measured in blocks per week. So again, I wouldn't overstate this, because while Donetsk is politically significant to the Russians, it is not comparably significant to Ukrainian forces, right? It doesn't have real operational significance. It's, one of the regions where the pro-Russian sentiment is strongest, right? The Donetsk Republic has been fighting ostensibly as a separatist since 2014. And so it's not essential to Ukrainian forces that they hold this, but Russia's paying a considerable price to push it out. The one thing that's tough about this is that Russian, what they call force generation efforts, is something we always have to keep in mind. And the term force generation effort refers to the ability to, create armed forces, right? To turn civilians and raw materials into weapons, to a fighting ready battalion or brigade or unit. And this is a tall order for Russia right now. As we've seen, they have manpower, but it's not clear that they can give them meaningful training to turn them from civilians into soldiers. It's not clear that they can give them equipment to allow them to fight meaningfully. And so the question on everyone's mind is, if Russia indeed engages in a full mobilization program in January, what will those troops be equipped with? Will they actually be a fighting force, or will they simply be given badly outdated weapons and sent without adequate training to the battlefield? Or will Russia simply just not send them all at once, but instead trickle them in as they can get them armed and equipped? The answer to that question is going to dictate how significant it is that Ukraine is forcing Russia to burn troops, right? If Russia can have a big pipeline of troops coming into the battlefield, then they can afford to have a comparably large pipeline of troops, we're going to say, going out of the battlefield, maybe on stretchers, maybe in coffins. But that is the ultimate equation that Ukraine has to win, right? Because Ukrainian forces have already done a lot of force generation efforts, right? There's not many more. There's already a general conscription. And while those troops are very well equipped, it's not clear that they have as robust a pipeline feeding new soldiers in. And so that is the question sort of on everyone's mind, is how much faster can Russia generate forces to make up for the tremendous casualties I suspect it's taking trying to seize these urban areas. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for today. First off, be sure to like and subscribe, not just here, but on Facebook as well. There's a lot of impersonators, so I've linked to my real account in the description. Also, if you want access to the uncensored combat videos, the kind that YouTube won't let me show you, those are going to be on the Patreon. Link to that is also in the description. And thanks so much to my Lieutenant tier patrons. You guys are the ones who make this whole thing possible. Thanks so much. I'll see you all in the next one.